10 years ago, there was an opportunity for myself to start making some sandwiches, and just this month in September, we're actually celebrating the 1 millionth sandwich being created, taken out to the streets of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and given to somebody that is in need. And it's that thread, or it's that mission that single sandwich taught me 10 years ago. We are doing the exact same thing at Loaves Fishes. We are finding something somewhere, we are finding food, we are finding resources, always related to removing some type of barrier and getting that food onto a plate, into a meal, and helping out one of our guests wherever they may be. So we do that with food rescue. We obviously could not scale the way that we scaled and continue to serve what will be 5.2 million plus meals this year with, if we had to go out and purchase all of that food. So we do that through food rescue. What is food rescue? Food rescue is meeting the food at the very top of the ecosystem where it's being manufactured, created, grown, and we follow it all the way through the distribution channels. Before they send it out to the grocery stores, we pick it up again, we follow it on down to where it's being sold to consumers, whether that's a restaurant, it's a commissary kitchen, it's a corporate lunch hall, and then we take that food, we bring it back into our system, and we create meals. We create meals of all different types, whether that's reheating and reserving something that's been rescued, that's been prepared, or giving it to one of our chefs at the kitchens and turning it into something tasty that shows up at our meal sites each and every day, 7 days a week. For that one moment, whether it's coming to get a to-go meal, it's that handshake, that smile, and some food on the streets. People that we serve, our community, they are our guests. Many of you know about that portion of our work. Like I said, the food rescue program and why it is so important. It continues to scale. We rescued 1.2 million pounds of food last month, and that will continue to grow. So what happens to all that food at the end of each week? How do we make sure that that food doesn't just end up in one of our dumpsters? Well, we do that with what we call our street outreach programs. It is the end of our system at each week that allows us to make sure that when we say yes to anything that shows up, we don't have to spend enormous amounts of time and enormous amounts of your money sorting and laboring and looking through those foods and taking only what we think that we can use. We're able to rescue all of it and put it in the hands of our guests all over the Minneapolis and St. Paul. The communities that we serve is anyone that needs a meal. That could be someone, myself, it could be families such as yours, it could be an individual that is suffering with some type of homeless experience, it could be someone that is looking at their bills this month and they had an unexpected car breakdown or medical bill or something for their kids for school, and they're needing to choose, do I pay my bills or do I feed my family? The stories continue to grow and the scenarios continue to expand on who needs access to a meal and who needs a barrier removed that Loaves Fishes can show up for. And we do that through our street outreach programs week after week after week. We have a partnership with Serenity Village and Be Kind to People where we pass out food every single Friday to the communities, and that food goes out to 300 and some cars representing 1 through 6 families. At the end of that day, we take our Loaves and Fishes trucks and we pack up the food that we have left and we set off to the communities experiencing homelessness all around Minneapolis and St. Paul. And we make a difference in people's lives, from the tent communities to the temporary homeless shelters to the individual families that have transitioned into some type of subsidized housing. That's where we show up. That's what your support does. That's how the street outreach program works, and it works week after week. We're always out there making sure that we get the food to the people that need it. We realized that there was an opportunity to maybe impact other nonprofits who are providing meals for their programs. And so what that looks like is, I always like to use the example of a youth homeless shelter. Youth homeless shelter, their mission is definitely not food, but they do need to feed those youth. Their mission is to be able to provide resources, housing opportunities, and advocate opportunities to move forward. So if they're spending all their money on just feeding their youth, their mission suffers. And all types of nonprofits have this exact same story. When we're able to show up as a partner through the hub, these nonprofits can come access our inventory system for 19 cents a pound, statically across the board. So that's one apple or 1,000 chickens, it's still 19 cents a pound. And that makes a tremendous difference in a nonprofit's budget. All of this food has to get to our guests somehow, and how are we serving all of these meals day after day after day? It comes down to our site coordinator figuring out how to orchestrate volunteer needs, figuring out how to make sure that they get all the food that is needed, bringing together something creative, going to the warehouse, all of these different aspects that culminates at the meal site. This is where a Loaves and Fishes guest is able to show up and get whatever they need as relating to meals. So we've expanded, we've grown, we've made impact, we've partnered, we've sustained, and we've also traveled to St. Cloud. Many of you have heard about the new initiative in St. Cloud. What is it? Well, it's a warehouse and it's a kitchen all under one roof. We've taken everything that we've learned and everything that we've done in the metro area, and we've consolidated all of those things into one building to try to see how we can make an impact in St. Cloud that is similar to what we're doing in Minneapolis and St. Paul. We are very, very intentional about making sure that we don't duplicate services when we go into new areas such as St. Cloud. That's why we're up there only with a warehouse and a kitchen, because plenty of nonprofits are serving the meals, but nobody in St. Cloud is consolidating the food rescue or preparing the meals for these meal sites. So we're just helping those nonprofits scale and doing what Loaves and Fishes does so well, is show up in the food ecosystem to remove barriers. We need your help more than we ever have before. The need is greater than it's ever been. The barriers are larger than they've ever been. The gap financially between someone's access to food is greater than it's ever been. And the financial stability or the donor environment is as low as it's ever been. So here we sit. There's a paradox in front of us. We need to find new creative ways to bring in revenue. We need to be introduced to new corporations, new donors that are willing to walk alongside Loaves and Fishes to continue to destroy those barriers and continue to remove those gaps and bridge those gaps for individuals so that we can continue to serve Minnesotans the way that they've come to expect, with a healthy and nutritious meal from Loaves and Fishes. At the core of what we do, it's a mission, and everybody shows up for their own individual reasons. Myself, why I'm here, why I was making those sandwiches so many years ago, why I was driven or motivated to show up week after week to pick up that produce and send it down to the streets with those sandwiches. Why I wanted to continually give back and why I was driven and where the passion came from is I walked out of one of those stories, very same stories myself. I found myself 10 years ago homeless, at the tail end of a 25-year addiction, everything gone, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Found my way into recovery, and very quickly realized that the only way that this was going to work for me is if I was able to find a way to interact and give back to the very places that I had been, not only to remind myself of the possibility of those places and remind myself of what they look like, but also being that conduit or that ambassador of, people can change, that there, opportunities do arise, that, that people do care, like all of you, like everybody that supports Loaves and Fishes, that, you can make a difference in one individual's life, and that can replicate into a movement, that there's, you just never know what you're doing and how big of a difference you make when you show up. And that happened sandwich after sandwich, after meal, after meal, after pallet, and just continues to replicate. And so I get to wake up each and every morning and start this adventure that we call Loaves and Fishes together, for that very same reason. That's never ended for me. So I'm grateful that I get to be here today and remember where not only that I came from, but I get to look forward to where we're going.